Thanks for having me.
Glad you had a safe journey over from Manchester.
Absolutely, yeah.
Met before, we've talked a number of times on the phone and emailed and what have you. But now it's the real thing.
We're here. It's great. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Lucy, as I kind of intimated then, your story, your life and your upbringing seem to have children at the centre of everything.
Yeah.
You told me that even at the age of 10, your family had been fostering for 5 years and your home was bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
You moved into a huge old rectory in the country and your parents have provided homes for over 100 babies and children over the years.
Yep.
Your mum and dad must be amazing
Exhausted.
people. Tell me about your mum and dad.
They are incredible people, actually. And interestingly enough, and I do need to start with this, my mum's called Wendy. And she's always sort of held this kind of not feeling good enough, actually, even though, you know, we know she's incredible. And once someone said to her, Wendy, that's the name of the girl who looked after all the lost boys in Peter Pan. And suddenly she realised her purpose. And it was like she suddenly sort of flowered and bloomed, which was beautiful to see. But yeah, they are incredible people. I always say that my dad is a gentleman and a gentleman. And I guess he needed to be with that many children coming through. Yeah. They both had a lot of patience and were very good with discipline as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So, great family situation to come up in, because that's all you knew virtually from the word go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was 5 years old when we started fostering, and we had suddenly the dollies were alive and we were allowed to, you know, bath them and feed them, and it was absolutely gorgeous. We once had twins, and me and my sister sort of grabbed one each, and Jane was mine and Sarah was hers, and we just looked after these babies like they were ours. You know, obviously Mum did the major bits, but we were all hands on as a family. It was lovely.
You just said you described your dad as a gentleman and a gentleman who loved you all very deeply.
Very much.
And you have 2 homemade siblings and 2 adopted.
Yep.
So 5 of you in all. You told me that your adopted sister Sarah has Rett's syndrome and requires 24-hour care.
Yeah.
What is Rett's syndrome and how do your mum and dad cope? Because they're both now retired.
Yeah, so when Sarah came to live with us, she was only 3 weeks old, actually, and we were told there could be some issues, but we had no idea what those issues might be. But we just absolutely fell in love with her, and we did feel this, because we all had faith, we did feel this incredible stirring that she was our child.
How old were you at that point?
Gosh, I was... you might know my age if I do. No, I'm joking. I can't actually remember. I was a teenager.
You were a teenager?
Yeah, so late teens, I think. Yeah. But yeah, we all had the faith in us that she was our sister or our child. We just knew that she was right for our family. So when they told us there could be a disability, we just said, fine, we'll get on with it. Absolutely, she's ours. And then the cruel thing about Rett syndrome is that the child can develop normally for up to 2.5 years, and then they start to digress. And she was actually doing, you know, saying little words and sitting up and recognizing, you know, really sort of interacting with us. And then things started to go wrong, if you like, and she stopped interacting so much. They go through a period of screaming a lot because they just don't understand what's happening. And that was very hard. You know, as this little dot, our little Sarah, we couldn't comfort her properly. We couldn't tell her what was going on because we didn't know ourselves. But the gorgeous thing about Rett syndrome is that it's also called angel syndrome because they have little angelic faces and they communicate with their eyes and smiles. And that's all they can do, which is very sad in a way, but beautiful because when you get the smile, your whole body lights up. It's just wonderful to see her smile. So it's been a challenge, and my parents still look after her, but they have carers at night now. So the carers stay over and help her.
What are your parents doing these days? Because they are retired, aren't they?
They are retired, but they live in a big old house in the country. So Mum phoned the other day and said that she'd been up the scaffolding fixing the roof. So there's me like, Mum, please slow down. But they're never gonna stop. They're wonderful people. Yeah.
As you were growing up, you saw fostering and adoption as part of your normal family life. And ironically, you were faced with the same issues over childbirth as an adult yourself. How has what you saw in your childhood helped you to cope with the concept of adoption yourself?
Yeah, good question actually, because I did see a big difference between myself and my husband when we were faced with adoption. We'd already talked about it. He's an incredibly compassionate guy and a daddy through and through, Lindz, my husband. So he'd wanted to adopt. We'd talked about this even before we'd got married, one day we would adopt. But I think when we were faced with it before we had our own children, he had a lot more questions than I did. Like a barrage of them were coming in and, will I be good enough? Will the child, will this happen? Will that happen? All these questions sort of flooded his mind. And it made me see that what I'd gone through really had helped me to have peace in the decision and see it with clear eyes, actually, what adoption really means.
Okay. 2 of the disabled foster children that your mum and dad cared for, they died when they were very young. What were your memories of that, and how did you cope with it?
The first was little baby Leanne, and she had hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain. And we'd always had to be very careful with her, 'cause if we wanted to hold her, we'd have a massive big pillow, and you'd put her head in the pillow, and Mum was like watching us like a hawk, because we were quite young. So we could literally sort of sit there and stare at her, really. So we knew she was very ill. I think the thing that I struggled with more was seeing her dad, because her mum and dad used to come, almost daily to see her. They just couldn't give her the care that she needed at home. So they would arrive at the house, and they were really lovely people, very sort of jolly and bouncy and chatty, and adored this little girl. Her dad was just always just, adoring this little face. She had a gorgeous little face, little pursed lips and stuff. But we weren't told everything about when she was near the end, but he obviously had. So he started arriving at our house looking quite dishevelled, and he wasn't dressed as smartly, and he wasn't talking, he was unshaven, and he just looked so pitiful and so sad, and I'd never seen that before. And I think as a child that affected me almost more than Leanne dying. So yeah, when I think about her death, I think more about that. And then when I think about little Ashley, he was just all smiles, but again, he was very, very disabled, so we knew that there was a chance that this might happen. So when it did happen, my parents are amazing and really did concentrate on heaven and told us that they've gone to a better place, and Jesus is looking after his babies now, his little ones, and that they'd be walking and they'd be laughing and they wouldn't be ill. And actually, that was just such a beautiful thing as a child to hear and to have as a comfort. And I've always held that now, and I guess I do see death differently because of it. It doesn't scare me at all, but it's not a nice thing, is it, at all? But it doesn't scare me in the way that it could have, because of the way that our parents talked about it, which is a real blessing.
You also experienced the loss of Rachel from your church when you were in your early 20s, and that hit you very hard.
Yeah.
What sort of questions were you struggling with at the time?
Yeah, I think that was the first time I'd sort of thought about, hey, hold on, she had lots that she was doing. She was serving God, actually. She was on mission, and she went swimming with a friend in the sea, and they got caught in the currents, and they both died, which was an awful tragedy. And someone said at her funeral, the amazing thing is that it was her dad actually said it, which I can't believe he had the strength to say it, but he said she became the answer to her prayers because she was walking along the beach saying, how on earth are we going to fund this orphanage that we're working towards building? How are we going to find the finances? Talking with one of the leaders. And then through her death, they raised enough money for the orphanage, which, of course, we would have preferred to have had Rachel around. But the fact that her dad shared this, I remember thinking, great, that's amazing to hear, but hold on. And it did start me on a bit of a, hold on, God, she was serving you. Why didn't you look after her? Why? And it started those questions, you know, as a early 20s. I hadn't really been through that questioning stage yet of, hold on, could you not have done a bit more here? Or could you not have helped her then? Or, you know, so it did hit me quite differently, actually.
Okay. Now, moving on to something different, really. How did you get involved with 2 girl bands, including Blush? Because Blush came here, and I also
actually,
remember...
my biggest fan is in the audience, Mark Mitchell.
Oh, yeah. And I think you were at the Cathedral one year for a Christmas carol concert as well. So you got involved with the 2 girl bands, including Blush. How long did that all last for, and how did it come about?
I'm trying to think, actually. Just let me think. So Vienna was first, and I mean, I did a little bit of a stepping stone thing, actually, because I was at university, and someone asked me to sing in a band called Psalmistry, but I don't talk about that loads, because it was really, really fun, actually, but it was kind of my first little outing as a singer. And I learned a lot from these guys. We used to sort of play little churches and pubs and youth groups. And I remember once we played a youth group, and there were 8 children, and they put their chairs right in front of us, like that, and just sat there. We were like, oh my gosh, what do we do next? Okay, anyone want to clap? Anyone want to enjoy themselves? Nope. Okay. So there was some of my earliest memories, but thankfully it didn't continue. And Vienna was, I would say, my first full-time job, band singer. And we went all around America, which was incredibly fun. Really, really great opportunities.
How long were you with Blush for?
That was about 3.5 years. So it wasn't that long, but it felt like forever. It was really great. And then Blush was about 7 years. And we were more ministry-based then. We were going into schools in England and doing week-long things. And we'd travel with the Tribe, which then was LZ7, which then was my husband. So, it was a lot of fun, but it felt a little bit more responsibility. I think we got away with a lot in Vienna, just getting in a bus and going and gigging.
And how many years we were involved with
So
Blush?
Blush was 7 years or so.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that was that. It just finished.
The
time had come.
It actually finished because I had started doing IVF at that time.
Right.
So I had to make an incredibly difficult decision of whether it would be band or family at that time. It felt like it was one or the other.
Okay.
So.
Are you still in contact with the other girls?
Yes, yeah. All
Do
of
they
them,
live nearby or what?
Well, we're all dotted all over the country, actually. Right down south in Littlehampton, and Manchester as well. And so we're all over the place. And Shanessa from Vienna is over in Portland, Oregon. So we're all over the place.
Okay. Photography had become a major part of your life, and you moved up to Manchester and lived with Tim and Emma Owen.
Yeah.
And it was about this time that you met your husband, Lindz. So go on, tell me about Lindz.
One of my favourite subjects. So he was in a band. He'd come up to Manchester to join the band, the Tribe, the Worldwide Message Tribe. So he started coming to Tim and Emma's house to get to know them because they were in the band as well. And that's where I saw him and thought, okay, he's quite nice. And actually, it was quite incredible for me because I didn't know it would happen this quickly. But before we even started dating, I knew he was my husband. I'd had a real assurance in my heart that he was.
Did he know that? No.
Not straight away. You had to take a bit of persuading. But actually, it wasn't too long afterwards we had the conversation, if you like. You know, if we do start dating, this is pretty serious, because we were about 25-ish or something.
All right.
I know. So he was like, right, this is going to be serious if we do get together. And then within 2.5 months, we were engaged. So,
Wow.
yeah, we just knew. It was incredible. We do count that to God, actually, because we did feel like he really spoke it to us. Which
And
is great.
how long after that did you get married?
Well, we waited a little bit. It was 15 months we waited then to get married.
Oh, an eternity. Yeah.
Oh, it was so long. I wanted to get married that summer, but he went and put a gig in, so he didn't have to.
Oh, dear. What was he playing
Isn't
at?
it cheeky? He wanted to wait a bit.
Yeah. Lucy, we want to talk about some really important issues in the second part, but we're going to have another song now. And in that second part, we're going to talk about loss of faith, restoring of faith, and the fulfillment of adopting children. But just before Christina sings to us, let me ask you what you thought, you've got married, what you thought the natural course of events would have been after getting married.
I had it all planned out. We were going to get married. Sorry, we were married. I thought it would be 2 or 3 years or so of, you know, having fun and having lions, and then children would come along. And we talked about having a football team because we both wanted lots of children. So that was the natural course. I just thought it was going to take.
Okay.
It's a bit different.
We'll hold it at that point.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, Christina.
Perfect.
Thank you for coming over together. You've really blessed
Good,
us.
isn't she?
For a year or so after you were married, you expected that children would come along, but it just didn't happen. What sort of questions did you ask of God at the time? How did it affect your worship, your prayer, and ultimately your faith?
Yeah, I think I'm the sort of person who's I've always said this, I've had a beautiful love affair with Jesus. I've just always adored him. He's felt like a beautiful friend and, you know, the most incredible God. And, you know, I've always sort of seen him. I felt like I saw him in the right way. You know, I saw him, I honoured him as a God, and I saw him as a father. And I think when this first came, I feel like my first thought was, oh, I'm not good enough for him. Actually, he's not giving me what I wanted, so I've messed up. And I think that was my first thought was, oh no, it's such disappointment of almost like the dream had been broken, that we'd had this, I thought, this beautiful love affair, if you like. And then I thought that I was a disappointment to him, and he'd taken it away and not allowed this, because I didn't understand properly then. I think that was my first feelings.
And did that effect go on from there? Did that affect your ability to worship, to pray, and what have you?
Yeah, it did actually. I think I felt like I sort of started sort of trying harder. You know, like a child really wants to please an angry teacher or something. And I think I sort of suddenly flipped and saw God quite differently. And I thought, oh no, he's angry with me, he's upset with me, I've done something wrong. And then I felt like I was sort of doing and trying to be something that I wasn't quite, you know. And so it did affect things. And then I think I've started to feel that those prayers weren't being answered. So actually prayer isn't real. You know, that feeling, I just thought, well, if that's not being answered, then that's my biggest heart's cry. Then little things aren't going to be answered as well. So why bother?
Yeah.
And I almost sort of stopped. I just stopped praying. I just thought, this isn't working, so why carry on?
Yeah. How long was it between getting married and considering the adoption route?
We'd been married about 3 years when we started trying for children, and then it was another 7 years or so that we started to talk about adoption.
Okay.
So yeah, about 10 years or so.
10 years, really, in total, yeah. How emotionally upset did you get? And did you become angry with God?
Yes. Yeah, and actually, I mean, I was in... I keep a journal, so I've written a lot of it down there, and I read back on it, and it's just, just questions of, why is this happening? What have I done wrong? Why would you do this to me? I thought you loved me. And, and I think on my journey of faith, I got to the point where I understood that it was okay to talk to God like that. I wasn't swearing at him and calling him an idiot or anything like that, but I was saying, I need answers. You need to give me answers. I don't feel anything at the moment. I don't feel you. I can't hear you. You're not answering prayers. You're not giving me my heart's desire. And you promised you would. So I did get angry with him, actually. And I did have conversations like this, very honest, angry conversations, actually. And I think we can. I really believe we can.
Looking back over that period, and other people would say, I'm sure the same thing, do you believe it's okay to be angry with God?
I think he's like, I see him now so differently. And now that I've got a little boy who we've adopted, and I think if Jack came up to me and he pummeled me and said, Mummy, why is this happening? Why did you not let me do it or whatever? I would go, actually, I don't mind that you're doing that, because I know that I was trying to keep you safe. And I know that what is going to come will be far better than what is happening right now. And so I know now that I see that God saw the whole plan, but I didn't at the time. So I do believe that it was okay for me to question and ask those questions and feel anger and feel angry with him.
Yeah.
And I think he's okay with that, because he's a father and he loves us and he wants to pick us up and he wants to look after us through those questions, doesn't he?
Over an 8-year period, was this a journey over having a child, or do you think a journey over faith?
I love that question, because I think, to start with, it was a journey to have a child, but it became a journey of fighting for my faith, actually. And I say now that I feel like I've earned my faith. I've earned a badge of honor almost, that I fought through. I don't think waiting is sitting still. I think waiting for something that you want is very active. And I found that. I found I was in a fight the whole time. And I could have lost my faith. And in fact, I did lose my faith at one point. And that was the most terrifying thing I've ever gone through in my whole life. And I wrote it in my journal as well. And I said, God, I can cope with it. I mean, I was saying God still, so obviously I was hoping. But I said, I can cope with not having children, but I cannot cope with finding out that you're not real. So you're going to have to help me there. And that was one of the crossroads that I reached that was actually more important to me than having a child. And thankfully, he has shown me that he is very real. Yeah.
How did Lindz, how did he cope with this period?
Yeah, he's very different to me. So I say that I'm a sociable introvert, because I need time to process things on my own and recover, on my own, I guess. And he is an extrovert through and through. So he coped with it by going out and being with friends and being with people. And he needed, to have people and noise and things around him, whereas I needed this sort of quiet and headspace. So I think I had more time, just me and the journal, or me and God, and me and you, just sort of processing things and chatting things through. And he dealt with it quite differently, but he was in a lot of pain, because he's always wanted to be a dad. And he was faced with the possibility of never being a father.
What were the struggles and the issues over considering adoption?
Yeah, I had fewer because I had experience with it, but I think you do have questions, and I I mean, I don't want to say regrets because I've got Jack now, so I know how wonderful it is now. But beforehand, I know that I sat there and I thought, I'm never going to have a child. If I adopt, I'm never going to have a child that looks like Lindz or myself. I'm never going to be able to design a nursery for a newborn. I'm never going to have that beautiful feeling of a child being put in my arms, and I'm never going to feel a child kick. I mean, it went on and on and on. I'm never going to. And that was where I was getting my headspace into. And in fact, Lindz was as well. He was sort of thinking, gosh, I'm never going to do that. But I think the turning point for us was when we realized what we were going to have. And we were going to be parents. We were going to have a child. We were going to get the chance to impact this little life and have the blessing of the laughter in our home or whatever. So I think that for us was the turning point with adoption, when we were able to see what we were going to gain, not what we were missing out on or losing. That was quite a big thing, yeah.
In my ignorance, but I think perhaps an understandable question, was there ever a time when you and Lindz felt that adoption would be like a second best route?
Yeah, we did, and I realised recently that I'd felt that way, and I really felt bad for it, actually, because of the joy that we feel now. But at the time, we definitely... I'm so sorry, I'm dropping this. At the time, we felt that... I actually hate saying this now, so please hear my heart on it. But we felt that we were being punished. I know, sorry. And,
I understand.
But we weren't.
Of course you weren't.
We can see it now. But this was God's best plan.
You had to take that course, didn't
But
it?
we had to take the course. Sorry. I warned David I'm a crier.
Let's look on the real happiness that you found in all this.
Yeah.
How old was your son Jack when you adopted him?
My other favourite subject. He was 11 and a half months.
Right.
So he was a little tiny thing.
And what length of time was the process from when you first found out about Jack and you actually getting him?
So we went through, I think it was about 10 months, the process. And then we were told by our social worker, and we were given a profile, and this little face looked at us, and we couldn't explain it. We just knew that this little boy was ours. And I thought I was getting a daughter first, actually. So I was a bit shocked, but I just looked into this little boy's eyes, and I felt this connection with a photograph. And it was blurry, and it wasn't the best photograph at all, but we just knew that this little boy was ours. And I've forgotten the question, sorry.
Doesn't matter. You've answered the question about how long it was.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about Jack. Jack must be 7 now?
He's 7, yeah.
Yeah. And I asked you to tell me one amazing fact about him, and you said, 1? So tell me a few. What's amazing about Jack?
Well, the most amazing thing is seeing us in him. You know, because I said before, one of the fears was that we would never have a child that looked like us or behaved like us or was genetically ours. But actually, this child is us. It's incredible. And I shouldn't be so surprised, really, because he's with us, most of the day, every day. But he's just wonderful, and he's loves cuddles and kisses.
Snuggling.
Snuggling. Snuggling's our favourite.
Yeah.
But he wants to be outside playing football all the time with his dad and basketball, and he just won't keep still for a minute. And he's just fun. He just jumps up on the sofa and goes, "Mummy, look at this dance I've just created." And it's like just a crazy dance, and he's doing gymnastics. And, "Mummy, can you go on all fours? And I'm going to jump all over you." And you're like, "Oh." And it's just wonderful. He is truly a firecracker of personality.
Lucy, you have gone from a low point of losing babies during a second round of IVF treatment and losing your faith as well to a point of fulfillment through Jack and the restoration of your faith in God. How have you been restored yourself through all of this?
Yeah, I want to make the point that I feel that I had healing before Jack arrived. And I think that's quite important because I think that shows how good God is. Because I could easily say, well, actually, when you get a child, when you've waited so long, that promise can heal every part of brokenness, you know. But actually, I want to give God the glory that he did that healing before Jack came along, before we even knew about Jack. So, yeah, he did an amazing work in my heart. It wasn't overnight. It was a long process. But I think the biggest thing for me was, and I've actually written a book, and it's not published yet, but I've written a book, and it's been really great going through it all. But I write this process about, there was a point where I just thought, I'm forever going to be looking back over my shoulder and saying, what if I never try IVF again? What if I do this? What if we do this differently? And I think I came to the point where I was like, okay, if I'm going to be okay ever, then I need to properly grieve not being able to have my own child. Whether I ever have a child through adoption or not, I need to grieve not having or carrying a child. And actually, I don't know about women out here, but I think for me, I felt that it was the biggest thing I was ever going to have to let go of in my whole world at the time. So it was a hard concept to get my head around. But I sat on the sofa and I just said, I remember it clearly, and I just said, God, there is nowhere left for me to go. I've tried everything myself. So if you really, truly are real, you're going to have to take me to the point where you're digging out the roots, if you know what I mean. So that all the pain of everything was still there. And he needed to dig out the roots and fully, you know, so I could fully be healed, basically. And I went through, I thought I'd really, really suffered until that point. But then I went through true grief. And, I don't want to go back there. And I know that I won't be immune from it for the rest of my life, because you lose people that you love. But it was horrible. And but the amazing thing in it all is that I felt his presence. And it blew my mind, because I'd always thought, you know, I'd really felt him before. But feeling him in the midst of pain is a totally different feeling to feeling him in the joy of, you know, of everyday life and of, you know, happiness. And that really was a life changer for me, actually.
A final question, Lucy. I often say this to the guests that I'm speaking to as to how their story has affected people here. There may be people here tonight, or who watch this online, who may be considering adoption. What would you like to say to them? And if I can prompt you with, there was this thing you said to me about looking after the widows and the orphans. So what would you say to people tonight?
Well, in the Bible, it does say that one of the highest callings is to look after the widows and the orphans. And that doesn't sound like a glamorous job, but in God's eyes, it is the most glamorous, beautiful thing that we could ever do. And through my journey of adoption, I just have seen it now through God's eyes, and I've seen that this is one of the most important jobs that we could have. Child rearing in general, I feel, is, you know, being a parent is an incredibly important role, bringing up the next generation. But to bring up one of God's children who could have ended up in all kinds of circumstances. I mean, Jack, you know, I don't really want to go into it, but he would not be the child he is today if we'd not adopted him. And that's not to big us up at all, but it is such a beautiful thing. And we have seen, I mean, there's struggles. There can be struggles with adoption, and you get very frustrated that people are asking you so many questions when you're so sure that you can be a good parent, you know. But they have to do their job. But actually, I think adoption is one of the most beautiful things. Now we've experienced it ourselves, it feels like one of the most beautiful things that you could do. And what a privilege as well, to be trusted with God's children like that. Me and Lindz are regularly blown away that God trusted us to look after his kid like that, you know. And hopefully there will be many more.
Jack wasn't adopted, he's your son.
He is. He was chosen as well.
Online resources, what was this that you were saying about?
Yeah, I'm actually, I've come through this and I'm just talking to more and more people about this issue. And I'm realizing that there's just not enough help out there. Well, I found for myself, when I was going through it, the websites that I found were either very scientific, they would just lead you to where we could have IVF or other, other treatment. Or there were forums that could actually turn out being ever so depressing because people were really sharing their pain, but not much hope. Or there were sort of the lovely smiley ladies holding their babies and sort of saying, one day you'll be this person too, and you feel like shouting at the screen, you know. Yeah. But those seemed to be the only sites that I could find with any sort of information or help as I was going through this. Yeah. And so I was prompted, and I feel very passionate now about trying to help men and women feel part of a family who are going through this pain. Yeah. So I really want to, in this online resource, I want to almost be a friend, if you like, and talk people through the options, but give people hope. And I don't know where it's going to lead. It's still in the early stages. I'm going to interview people and put that on the site, and testimonies of people who are still struggling, but people have walked through it as well, and how they did it. So I really want it to be a place where people can just feel like they're not alone. Because I think the biggest thing for me was shame, because we felt like we were being punished in a way, and we had to walk through that and process it all. But also the isolation, I think, because you just don't want to really share it. You don't want to tell people how much pain you're in because you've got nothing to show for it. It's not like a broken leg, that you can show. So I really want to try and do that justice. So watch this space. And that's going to be called The Wait. W-A-I-T.
Right. Watch out for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Lucy, it's been a special evening, a real privilege to listen to you. And I know to share what you've shared with all these people, that's a privilege on our behalf. So thank you for coming to us. Thank you for telling us your story. I know God has blessed you with Jack. Yeah. And we wish you and Lindz every blessing in the world with him as the years go by.
Thank you, David.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lucy West.
Thank you.